We talk a lot about first HBCUs, first black graduates, first freedoms. But sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the first ones. They're the ones nobody talks about. Like the time a slave jail, literally a torture site, was transformed into a university, and it was made possible by a black woman. And this is her story, and it's one you need to hear. And before we go any further, share this with just one person because we have to get these stories out. Nobody's going to tell them for us. Okay, so the Civil War was over on paper, but in real life, the South was still burning with hate. Enslaved people had technically been freed, but where could they go? White mobs didn't vanish overnight. The economy was broken, families were still separated, and education, that was dangerous. Because teaching a black person to read had literally just been illegal. Freed men were setting up schools anywhere they could, in basements, in churches, even under trees. But in Richmond, Virginia, one of the most haunted places of slavery, became a school ground. They called it Lumpkin's Jail, but folks in Richmond called it what it really was, the Devil's Half Acre. It wasn't just a nickname, it was a warning. This was one of the most notorious slave jails in the South. Wait, slave jail? Yeah, you heard that right. Not a prison for criminals, a prison for property. So let me break it down. A slave jail was a place where enslaved people were locked up, often while they waited to be sold, punished, or transported. Some were captured runaways, some were just waiting for their owners to pick them up, and some were there because the traders didn't want them to spoil before auction. I don't know if it's exactly the same as a slave pen, but a slave jail? That was a business. It had cells, whips, chains, even ads in the newspaper. At Lumpkin's jail, there was a room just for punishment. People were beaten, tortured, and sold right there on the spot. And the man behind it all? Robert Lumpkin. He was one of the most notorious slave jail owners in the South. He wasn't just in the business, he ran it. And he was known to be brutal, cold, and calculated. The conditions inside his jail were horrific. There were cells with no bathrooms, just dirt floors and locked doors. Some people were kept in those rooms for months, chained, starved, and forgotten. Many of them died, and not from punishment, but from disease, infection, and filth. This was intentional neglect, and it wasn't just Lumpkin using these people. Others paid him to punish or discipline enslaved individuals. You could pay him to beat someone, to break them. He turned torture into a business model. But here's where the story turns on its head. Because Robert Lumpkin had a black wife, or concubine, and her name was Mary. Now, don't let that word wife fool you. Black women couldn't legally marry white men at the time, and Mary was enslaved. She didn't have any rights. She couldn't say no. But Lumpkin kept her in his home, lived with her like a wife, and had multiple children with her. In fact, they had 5, and the first one she had at age 13. But here's the thing. He never had a white family, at least not that we know of. There's no record of another wife, no white heirs. It was Mary and their 5 black children, living in the same house as the jail, while men, women, and children were being beaten and sold in the yard. The hypocrisy is loud. He brutalized black people for profit while building a home with a black woman. I don't know. I don't get it. And when Robert died, he left everything to her: the land, the buildings, the jail. And Mary, formerly enslaved, now free, did what most wouldn't dare. She used it to build something new. Mary leased the land to a man named Nathaniel Culver, who had a vision. Now, let me tell you right quick who he was. Nathaniel Culver was a white Baptist minister. He was an abolitionist, a loud one. He traveled the country preaching against slavery. And after the war, he came to Richmond with one goal: to teach the freedmen how to lead. He wanted to start a seminary, a school for black men to become teachers, pastors, and change makers. And thanks to Mary Lumpkin, he did. On that same blood-soaked ground, black men sat and learned to read. They studied scripture, law, debate, history. That seminary became Richmond Theological Institute, which would eventually merge into Virginia Union University, a legendary HBCU still standing today. A jail became a school. a site of trauma became a place of transformation, all because of Mary Lumpkin. And let's be clear, Mary Lumpkin's name needs to be known because she didn't just survive, she flipped the script. She took the devil's half acre and gave it back to the people. This wasn't the first HBCU, but because of the pain, the power, and the resistance, I wanted to start here. And while they love to talk about the progress, they don't always tell the truth about where it came from. It came from a woman like Mary. It came from land soaked in suffering, but reborn through purpose. So, yeah, tag somebody, share it with your cousin, your classmate, your homegirl, because we can't wait on them to tell our stories. We got to tell them ourselves, out loud, on camera, in ink, on stage, in the streets, because this ain't just Black history, this is Black power. Remember to comment, like, and share to help out the algorithm, and remember to subscribe for more stories that they won't put in your textbook. Peace.